What's going on, guys? Welcome back to the KBR Sports YouTube channel. In today's video, we're talking about what the issue is building around NBA super teams. Stay tuned for the rest of the video. We'll get to it. Guys, thanks for tuning into today's KBR Sports video. Of course, if you're not subscribed, make sure you hit the subscribe button. And before we jump into the video, make sure you hit the post notification bell so you don't miss any future videos at all. The problem with building NBA super teams, man, let's dive into it because we just finished up a series with the Milwaukee Bucks and the Brooklyn Nets where they went 7 games, a very action-packed series. We had incredible clutch shots from Kevin Durant, wonderful moments from Giannis, a lot of dunks, a lot of big game moments, and a lot of clutch baskets by those kind of players, those superstars. And a lot of it was really under the guise of the injuries that we've seen throughout the season and the series that now rear the ugly head in the postseason. So it made me feel compelled to ask the question about building around NBA super teams and the debate that we've had for years around the super team build. Is it really fruitful in terms of winning championships long term? And guys, not to really kind of bury the lead, it's a yes and a no answer, right? I want to dive into it to really provide context in that regard. There's gonna be 2 parts. So I'll give you reasons why building around super teams is a negative and the reason why it's a positive. The negative about building around super teams is that if you have 3 superstars, right, your hope is that those 3 superstars you'll have carry the rest of your roster so far that they'll then lead you to the championship. A lot of times your roster is contingent on the health of those 3 superstars. If you lose 1 superstar, so let's say if you remove Kyrie from the equation, normally 2 superstars can still buffer the equation. You can win. In the case of Golden State, they were able to go to the NBA Finals even though Kevin Durant got hurt in the initial first round against the Clippers, and then he got hurt again against the Rockets. Everybody was picking the Rockets to beat the Warriors because they were like, whoa, Kevin Durant's not going to be there. Game 5 and Game 6, the Warriors won both games because they were like, they still have Steph, they still had Clay, they still had Draymond. They still had that core of all-star guys that were able to still win a championship, and they were able to go on to the finals until Clay got hurt, and that's when it was like, okay, yeah, Toronto's going to win this because now you saw Golden State was still fighting even without Kevin Durant, and they were still looking like they could win the championship until Klay Thompson got hurt. And so when you're looking at that, a lot of times when you have that top tier talent, if you have those 3 guys, then you are golden even if you lose one of those guys because the other 2 guys are just so good. It's a drawback and the good thing about super teams at the same time, because if you lose just one person, you still have the other 2 that can still make that championship run for you. But 2 players being hurt, your chances are done. That's pretty much the bread and butter of it all. If your 2 players are hampered in any type of way, we saw some of this from the latter years of the Miami Heat, where you started to see Chris Bosh and Dwayne Wade deal with ailments. Despite LeBron's greatness, yeah, he got them to the finals, and those guys were able to play in games, so they were still able to be effective in some way, but because they were hampered by injuries, it was kind of like the version of James Harden you're seeing. It's like, oh, well, if they were fully healthy, we would see them be able to play at their peak. But because they're hampered to some degree, we're not seeing their fullest versions of themselves. So that played a role in some ways as well. But now when you're talking about the benefits of having a super team, the benefits of having a super team is obvious. I don't think I really have to dive in deep here when I talk about the benefits of having a super team, because let's look at the most recent champions. And I guess when we're talking about a super team, we're talking about teams that have at least 3 all-stars on the team, I guess I would say, right? That's what we're considering a super team. I'm talking about all-stars that like currently made the all-star team, not like a guy that made an all-star team like 5-10 years ago and now joins the team. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about like a current all-stars. That's what I'm speaking on. So Golden State Warriors teams, Cleveland Cavaliers teams won the championship, the Miami Heat teams. Then you're going back to the Kobe Shaq Lakers. Then the Boston Celtics, of course, with Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen. Most times when you have a super team or you have that top tier line of talent, your team is almost guaranteed to get to the finals. There's no debate about it. Anytime a team has had an overwhelming amount of talent, that team has always found itself in the NBA Finals. It's very rare that they don't get to the finals if all the players in some degree are healthy or they're present for the playoff run. Only when 2 out of the 3 guys like I listed are hurt, that's when it doesn't happen. The reason why I had to title this to get you guys to click on the video for one, but I did want to also talk about building around superstars in general, because a lot of times you hear people really give pushback to when their teams will trade young pieces or draft picks for superstars that are already proven and that already have standing in the league. Now, to that premise, there is a lot more risk associated, especially if you're not building necessarily a super team, if you're building around 2 guys or whatever the case might be. But it depends on how high end the talent is of the 2 guys you're trading for. if you're talking about making a team that's paired of James Harden and Kevin Durant, yeah, you do that any day. Even the 76ers, they should have traded Ben Simmons. You could have imagined a fully healthy James Harden paired with Joel Embiid. Do you think Atlanta and in Philly are playing a game 7? There's no shot.
Hell no, to the no, 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 hell to the no.
Philly's probably way more dominant because now you don't have any of those late game issues. You have a point guard who actually spaces the floor, who can still drive and play late game minutes, can actually play crunch time minutes. So much of the game dynamic just changes now if you have a point guard that can shoot, do all the things that James Harden brings to the game. Even though you do lose a lot of what Ben Simmons does defensively and all those other things.
I don't give a fuck.
Let me tell you, what James Harden brings you offensively and overall is, look, it's wild. Okay, it's crazy. Philly's a good enough defensive team, in part because of Ben Simmons, but also because Joel Embiid is such a great anchor, but they have great defensive wings. That's not like James Harden would just be getting exposed out there. I think that what the defensive tipping scales of what Ben Simmons provides you versus what James Harden gives you is just not equatable. But what I will say is that that's where you get the benefit of having two top-end guys. Like when you get two top 10, two top 5 talent guys on the same team, most times than not, that team, depending on how well those guys mesh, are going to be a championship contender. Anthony Davis, LeBron James. Anthony Davis and LeBron James, they play with each other, and it's almost like the chemistry immediately was there. And you saw the dominance from the get-go. Whenever they play together, the dominance is not even a question. It just becomes a thing of now when you build a team around 2 superstars instead of 3, now if any one of those 2 superstars goes out, you are very, very, very much riding the line. And you're very much, unless the rest of your team is properly fulfilled out to be able to perform outside of having the 2 guys, then look, it's going to be tough. Like we saw with the Lakers this year, they got bounced because Anthony Davis and LeBron suffered from multiple injuries and the going got tough. But I will say that most times if you are able to go get those guys, those top 5, top 10 guys, you go and get them, because there's no guarantee that young players or draft picks are ever going to become superstars. There's no guarantee in the least bit. I don't know why people are so infatuated with just players. It's like their age is like people get off on their ages.
Pause.
I'm sorry, but there's no guarantee that young players are going to become superstars, let alone top 5, top 10 talent. There are young players that end up becoming all-stars and whatever, but they're not winning players, or they need another guy that can help them reach that point, or they're not at that point because they're so early in their career and they don't prioritize the right thing. You go and get those guys that are already proven, and you go and get those guys that are already, like right now, people are getting on Ben Simmons because he can't hit free throws. James Harden's a guy that's already been there, done that. You know what I mean? And he's already shown you he's an MVP caliber talent and all that stuff. So you imagine putting him with Joel Embiid, that's crazy. Even though you know that Ben Simmons possibly for long-term success can maybe reach a higher ceiling if he ever learned how to shoot or whatever the case might be. But when you go and get those guys, you're not, even though you want to play as much longevity as you can, your goal is to win championships. You can't just say, hey, we want to wait the long game and see if we can win a championship with these guys. Because when you have a top 10, top 5 player talent like a Joel Embiid, like a LeBron James or whomever, you go and get them pieces that can help them win right now. You're not sitting there just worried about the future, because the future, you don't even know what your team's going to look like. You don't know what your coaching staff is going to look like. You don't know what your management is going to look like, because most times if those guys don't win anyways, they get fired. So the more, there's always urgency in winning right now, unless your team is built around young players from the get-go. But when one of those top 5 generational talents comes to your team, you best believe you're going to make moves to get them talent right now and then that can make impacts to winning. In terms of the overall discussion, I think there's definitely an Achilles heel to super teams, but it's mainly when they get hurt, because we've seen more times than not. If we're even talking about teams right now, or teams that weren't built around 2 superstars at the least, the only teams that you really have that have won championships that have that kind of mold are the Dallas Mavericks from 2011 in recent years, the 2004 Pistons, and they were very, very all-around built team, not one premier superstar guy. And then maybe you can make the case for the Spurs teams, but even those Spurs teams, Tim Duncan obviously was that dude, but then Greg Popovich did a great job of sufficing and supplanting Tim Duncan's great talents and taking back Tim Duncan's offensive load and supplanting that with guys like Tony Parker, Manu Ginobili, Kawhi Leonard, whomever else. You know, they filled in those gaps really well, and then those guys ended up becoming all-stars in their own right. So let me know what you guys think. I'm very curious what you think. Obviously, a lot of our playoffs right now are being shaped by the injuries that have been endured by teams. Jamal Murray got hurt, Anthony Davis was hurt, LeBron James was hurt, Jalen Jaylen Brown hurt his wrist. Jimmy Butler in the Heat dealing with injuries as well. Injuries have just plagued this whole entire postseason, man. And Kawhi Leonard now out with injury, and Chris Paul dealing with COVID stuff. So let me know what you guys think down in the comment section below. Of course, if you didn't subscribe at the beginning of the video, make sure you guys go ahead and hit the subscribe button. Make sure you guys leave a like, comment down below in the video. Always all the interaction is appreciated because it helps with the YouTube algorithm, guys. And that's really your boy needs to help with the YouTube algorithm. So I always appreciate that support. Join the Discord. It's going to be down below in the link with the link as well. And of course, guys, until next time, I'm out.